Welcome to the channel. Thank you everyone for tuning in. Now join me on today's video for part 2 of should I mod my Sarb 33 to a Sarb 37. Now if you guys recall, I did a video not too long ago where I basically spoke about me wanting to modify this Sarb 33, and in the video, if you haven't seen it, I'll quickly summarize it, but I'll also link the video so you can check it out. I basically went on Uncle Seiko's website and I bought myself a Sarb 37 reproduction dial. I did show it in the original video, but I'll give you a quick glimpse of this again. So, we all know how I feel about this, and majority of Seiko lovers, that pink dial is indeed a unicorn. So the premise of the video was to reach out to you, the viewers, and basically seek a bit of advice on whether or not should I mod my Sarb 33. However, in all honesty, by the time I finished editing that video and released that video, I had my mind made up. I basically needed to purchase a Sarb 35. I want to thank every one of you guys that commented on the video, and rather than a lot of you guys saying go ahead, just mod it, put the pink dial in, a lot of you guys said what I actually wanted to do was hang on a minute, wait for a Sarb 35, wait for an alternative case. But the problem is, these cases are quite unique from Seiko. There are no really aftermarket cases available that are, exactly like this. I ended up waiting for a Sarb 35. That was the decision I went for. Thankfully, I wasn't impulsive on that. And indeed, patience is a virtue, because about 3 weeks ago, I did make my purchase of the Sarb 35. So here I have the Sarb 35, which I purchased. I bought it on eBay. It was used. The condition wasn't the greatest, but I want to give a shout out to the person that I bought it off. A really good brother, did hook me up, dropped him a quick message, got a bit more of a discount than he was selling it for. So I did pay well below the going rate. But I'll see if we can get some pictures up from the original listing. The watch was pretty beat up. And the first thing I did as I bought it, I sent it off to a good friend of mine. I have mentioned his name and his company, let's say, or his Instagram, when I previously showed a video of my Sarb 33 on my SCVS, which I had cleaned up and refurbed by him. So that is Sweeping Watches. I'll link his Instagram, and he does great work on watches. So if you're in or around Birmingham, or you don't mind posting a watch out, he's really good. He did really clean this watch up extremely well. Of course, it wasn't perfect. It isn't going to be perfect. There's a lot of dinks or deep scratches, which, no matter what you do, you can't really take out. But, he did a very good job, very acceptable job, and cleaned up the bezel. But, the condition, it was quite beat up, I have to say. But yeah, he's kind of cleaned it up, give it back some of his polish, some luster on the lugs, brushing's done nice. And all you'll find is a couple of dinks here and there on the bezel and the case, but the bezel has been fully polished, so he has restored it to his kind of former glory to the best of his ability. So I sent that off to Sweeping Watches. Now I have this watch back in hand. I think it's been with me for a couple of days. Again, I've kept it, I wanted to take my time to do this video, make sure I covered everything. So here's the watch. I have the parts from Uncle Seiko. I showed you the dial. I also purchased a bracelet from them. I'm surprised they had this bracelet, because you guys who watch my videos know I speak really highly of the SCVS bracelet that is found on the SCVS, of course, but this is Uncle Seiko's version. More or less exactly the same. Not much difference at all. So I also have a genuine Sarb 33, 35 bracelet in my collection, mint. I bought it a long time ago on eBay, so it's always worth having because it wasn't too expensive. So got a few options there. I'm going to give you a few pointers. If you are considering doing this, I'll break this video down and give you a few pointers that it is quite essential to look at before you actually start modding a Sarb 35 or a 33. There's a couple of things you want to have a quick look at before you go ahead and do that. Now, the first thing you want to do, which is what I did after I had the watch cleaned up, is you want to test the watch on the time grapher. So I'll put up a picture of what the watch showed, and it was running at minus 26 seconds. It had quite a low amplitude of 240, but a high B error of 1.3. Now, initially I demagnetized the watch before I ran the test. It's always important to demagnetize the watches just to get rid of any other interference, and then check on the time grapher. So you have to adjust this movement, and I'll tell you why. That's because the 6R15 movement, it is notorious for being quite temperamental and not very accurate at all. The 6R15, out of all the Seikos I've owned, has been the most problematic movement I have had. Every 6R15 I've had has had a problem. and you know, I've had to replace that movement. I'll tell you with what slightly later on. But yeah, the problem is, I think it's down to the amplitude or the coil spring that they use. You know, there is a few issues. It's quite a common fault with the 6R15s, to the point they made 4 different iterations, A, B, C, and D. And I've had issue with C's, B's, and D's. Right, so you know, they're not the best movement, and my previous ones, as I said, I've actually had them replaced because they just start fluctuating too much. You put them on the time grapher, it is literally like a scatter diagram, and there's no line, there's nothing there that gives you consistency. Once I regulated this watch, I was much happier with what it was running at. I adjusted the beat error to 0.2, amplitude shot up, and it was reading at plus 25 seconds, and then I further regulated it on the speed, and I got it down to around 0.2 to 0.4 with the crown up, crown down position, which is where I wanted it at. So I am kind of happy with that movement. I don't need to actually change the movement, because of course, if you're going to go ahead and mod the watch, then is the time to consider changing the movement. So you got to make sure you do these checks first and foremost. Demag it, stick in a time grapher, and see what it's running. Make sure it's quite healthy, it's got a good amplitude, and you know, beat error after adjusting stays consistent. We are now ready to mod the watch, so let's make a start. Straight away, you'll notice the difference when you open a 6R15. It's not like the NH35s, because the first thing is you've got a metal spacer present, and also you've got these 2 metal, let's have a look just a bit closer there. Got these 2 metal holders there, which actually secure the movement and the holder. So we've got to undo those screws, get them out, so we can get the whole movement out. Once you've done that, the movement should actually just fall out. But before that, of course, you know, we need to take the crown out. And the crown comes out, and you can now remove the movement. So put the case away somewhere where you won't get debris underneath it. So here we have the dial. So now let me show you guys something. Okay, let's get the movement out of the holder. So at this point, wait till the second hand hits 12, hack the movement, rotate the hands to that 12 o'clock before you go ahead and start to remove them. I suspect here one of the feet on the dial is actually broken and therefore not secured, so it's moving around a bit. So I'll just place it down and I'll get the hands off so I can get this dial off. So in order for the hands, this is where we've got to be extremely careful. This is what I am kind of nervous about. The hands on the Sarb, as you guys can probably tell, are quite thin, therefore a little fragile, so you need to not damage them. Make sure you have a soft cloth where you can drop the hands. The chassis on the 6R15, it does have 2 grub screws which actually secure the dial. So this is where you've got to get them off. So let's undo one of the grub screws. Now, because the other one's broken, it should slide out now. Now, once you get that off, this is also again a bit tricky. You'll find a frame, right, a little spacer that fits in between that and the dial. So as I did suspect, one of the dial feet is broken, which is why there was a lot of movement, which made it a little bit more awkward. However, it's not an issue. You know, you can always secure it down with some dial dots, but you know, even if you use one foot there, you know, that will stay secure to the movement once the watch is enclosed. Now let's talk to you a little bit more about this chassis over here. So you've got 2 grub screws, one there and the other one on the other side. Now if you want to replace the 6R15 movement with the NH35, now this is what I've done in the past on my both on my Sarb 33 and my Alpinist Sarb 17. First and foremost, I won't be selling those watches, so it's not a problem that I've done that. Second thing is, you get a much more reliable movement with the NH35. It doesn't have any of those issues that the 6R15 suffers with. Now they are easily removed because they are just press fitted, and all you want to do is on the actual reverse, first and foremost, if you want to get the NH35 and kind of mark out on the NH35 where these grub screws will fit, then you need to remove the movement holder from the NH35, that plastic ring, and literally place this on a movement holder or somewhere stable, because you'll need to really press hard right here where the grub screws are inserted into, and use one of these spring bar tools. Just press as hard as you can, it'll pop out. Same on the other side, and then basically you'll reinsert them on the opposite side of the NH35. It's a bit fiddly, but that is the only thing you've got to do, and it is totally possible. So therefore, that's why I say always test your 6R15, because if it needs to be changed, and then this is the point you want to change it. So we've got to loosen that screw here, and just to get that dial foot out, because that is stuck. We can start to basically assemble the dial, should I say. You need to obviously put that ring on before you do anything. So let's make sure you line up that ring to the holes. The bigger holes are there just where the dial feet sit, and that sort of W will sit on the lower holes. So that needs to be there, and then you can just directly place the dial on top. So this is that Uncle Seiko dial about to go in. Carefully does it. That has seated itself. Now is the tricky part. You've got to kind of flip it so you can tighten the grub screws. Just make sure at this point that you can actually see the dial feet have actually come out enough, and then you can go ahead and tighten. That is already looking awesome. Give the dial a quick clean, and we can start assembling the hands, which is probably going to be the most delicate operation here. At this point, this is where we need to fit the hands. And now what I have done in the meanwhile is I've just put some blue tack underneath that movement, so when I am pressing down on the dial, it isn't pushing the dial out, if that makes sense, because the chassis of the 6R15 is just a bit smaller than the movement holder. So let's start off with the first hand. And as I said, these are extremely delicate, so you need to be really careful. So you want to place the hand as central as possible. Make sure you have the right bit if you are using one of those pressers, which I am. And don't press too hard. Now the way I like to set them, and it works quite well for me, is I like to turn the hour hand at the 6 o'clock position. And then I like to install the minute hand at the 12. And that gives me more or less perfect alignment. So at this point you also want to give the hands a little clean. If you've got any smudges, any marks, any bit of debris, this is the time you want to actually clean that off. So once you have installed it, just give it a rotate to make sure the hands aren't touching and they are aligned and level to the dial. So one of the things I do is put both hands over each other and just check the gap under some light, and you can see there is a gap visible. and that will stop the minute hand from damaging the hour hand. I have on occasion pressed down too much on the minute hand, and then that causes a scratch just underneath onto the hour hand, which is not what you want, especially when you have bespoke hands like these, which you can't, you know, get replacements for. Check alignment and just make sure the date change is working also. So now we've got to stick the seconds hand. It's probably going to be the trickiest one to do. I don't use the presser for that. I use the hand press because I just need a bit more accuracy. And you know, you got to make sure it's not bent and all sorts. So let me make sure I get this right. And I want to make sure I do it right the first time, because you don't have many options or many chances with this. So let's elevate that dial slightly and make sure we get this on right. Now that seemed to go in fine. So the last check is just make sure that our hand, or sorry, the minute hand is just underneath to see if they touch, because you do not want that. That seems to have gone well. No issues there, which I'm quite happy about. I was quite cautious about doing this. So let's give it a quick once over, check it in the light for any, you know, smudges, any debris, etc. before we start to close it up. So I'll give that second hand a bit of a tidy before I go ahead and start putting this back together. And then we can go ahead, place this back on, and also those two little screws that we took out. At this point you can also reinsert the crown. And use the positioning of the crown to kind of get the holder right. Now the next bit is a bit fiddly if you've never done it before, but also at the same time it is pretty straightforward. I'm going to get those little tabs and insert them into a slot. There will be a slot just in the case, so let's see if I can do it without dropping these tabs. Just like that, and then place the screws in there. That's quite easily done. Now what you want to do is not fully tighten this at this point, just get a few threads in there just so you're securing it, and then do the other side, and then you want to actually tighten both screws. The case back on, give it a wipe down, and let's see how that looks. Here we are, the Sarb 35 rebuilt into a Sarb 37. I am absolutely over the moon how this turned out. You know, got the watch for a reasonable price. Of course, it wasn't the best condition, but that's the trade-off you make when you look at a used watch. The movement was good, and that dial, you know, the mod went successfully. There was no mishaps, but I was extremely cautious while I was doing this. So that is just spot on. I can't wait to get this on the bracelet. Now let's see what it looks like on the SCVS before we put it on the standard Sarb 33/35 bracelet that they come with. So guys, get ready for the final product. Here we have the Sarb 35 with that 037 dial on there, and I've put it on that SCVS style bracelet that I also got from Uncle Seiko, and I have to say, on wrist, that looks absolutely beautiful. Now Uncle Seiko did really think of everything when it came to this bracelet. The bracelet will come with two different clasps. One has two micro adjusts and the other has three, because it's well known with the Sarb 33s, with the two micro adjusts you can't get that perfect fit. It's either a little bit too loose or a little bit too tight, but with this third micro adjustment, it is actually a perfect fit. I took off 3 links two from one side and one from the other. And on the smallest micro adjust, I've got a bit of movement on the watch, perfect, just how I like it. And that bracelet is spot on. They've done such a good job. And you know, just for reference, here is the OEM bracelet from Seiko, and you know, very minimal differences indeed. And I love how that mod turned out. I'm overly gassed by this. I think I'm gonna wear this watch just as long as I can wear it, basically. And let me try it on this Sarb bracelet and see how that looks. So let's have a look at what I've done. I've put the Sarb 35 on the Sarb 33 bracelet. It does give it a different look, not so flashy, a bit more of a formal, smart look. And the Sarb 33, it has made it that much dressier. Now, of course, those of you guys that know, there is a SCVS 001, which is basically Sarb 33 with this exact bracelet. So I think I'll stick with this configuration for a little while, but overly impressed with the mod. So guys, just to summarize, if you do want to mod a Sarb 35 into a 37 using the Uncle Seiko dial and the bracelet that I showed you guys, first and foremost, make sure you check the movement before you continue, because you can change the movement to the NH35. I have to say, Uncle Seiko have absolutely smashed it at the park. They've given us enthusiasts something which is not available, you know, so majority of people don't actually have an issue with this. There are some who do. I absolutely love what I have in my hands right now, and I cannot wait to wear the life out of this watch.